right. Thank you so much to Alicia. That was very inspiring and eye-opening to the reality of how women are really treated. She also had a baby 3 months ago and looks awesome. So we're now going to move into the final portion of our Western Women's Summit, and we're going to end with our student activism seminar. So Évangéline and I are going to kind of give the rundown on what giving a campus Luce lecture looks like. So if we haven't really talked yet, my name is Lauren, and I'm helping to run all the programs at the CBL Center for Conservative Women. And we have a few different types of programs. We have our paid summer, spring, and fall internship. We have our day at the range, a gun range, and firearms training event, and we have our Luce campus lecture program. So the point of our lecture is to connect young women with conservative women speakers in order to bring that much-needed conservative voice to the likely very leftist campus university that you all are a part of. And even if your university is more conservative leaning, it's always really important to bring these speakers in. And I'll give you a few reasons why it is so crucial to bring a conservative woman to campus. Number one is that she can serve as a role model for the conservative women at your school. As you know, it is very scary to stand out as a conservative woman, and as you've noticed from this weekend, you're probably really inspired by everything you've heard and the courage that you've seen in the women who do want to speak out and can just serve as a really important model for what you might want to be in the future. It's also a really great opportunity to educate your peers. Like I mentioned, it's likely that your campus is really liberal and really leaning to the left. And this actually might be the first and only time that students at your school are able to hear a conservative speaker and be open to that alternative idea on campus, because I think that women conservative speakers will shine light on a topic and be able to give a different perspective. And it's just it's commonplace for college students to be liberal, but this is showing them, okay, there's actually an alternative, and hypothetically, I can agree with this alternative. The third reason is to gain credibility for your campus organization. If you are part of Young Women for America, a YAF chapter, Students for Life, or kind of similar conservative-leaning organizations, this is a phenomenal opportunity for you to gain a lot of credibility, to attract new members, to potentially acquire more funding for your group so that you can bring on more speakers later, because the whole point is to grow the conservative voice on your campus, right? So hosting one speaker will likely lead to even more speakers at your school. So now that you kind of understand why it's so crucial to have a conservative woman speaker at your campus, I'd like to talk a little bit about the first steps of getting a speaker to your school. The first one is to contact the Luce Center. So you're going to contact me, I'm your girl, and my email is in the student activism booklet that you all have in front of you. So you can kind of flip along through that as we're going through. I'm going to kind of hit on some major points in there. So you've contacted the Luce Center. We actually have a wide range of conservative women speakers available for you all to choose from. They are listed on our speaker network on our website, and a lot of the women you saw this weekend are available. And if you see someone kind of in the media that isn't on our speaker network, please still reach out, because there's a chance we also have a contact with them. And the reason that the Luce Center is unique in this is that in our network, we have these really special personal relationships with conservative women, and they want to work with us because we provide such an incredible platform for women to really speak out for their beliefs. And we can even potentially negotiate a lower speaker honorarium, which is what you pay them to come. And sometimes you'll either pay the speaker or you'll donate to their organization. So it's great to have kind of lower funding costs for that event. So say you've contacted the Luce Center and everything's going, the ball is rolling. You need to get your speaker approved by the school. So, as Évangéline touched on yesterday, this could be a bit of a challenge. There might be obstacles in your way, but don't be intimidated, because your school has likely brought liberal speakers to campus before, and you have the exact same right that your liberal classmates do. So you might get pushback at first, but cling to that First Amendment right to free speech. Work with the Luce Center to really advocate for you and show that you actually do have the opportunity to bring a speaker, and you have that right as a student. They may be few and far between, but if you can, befriend a conservative professor on your campus. They can be an advocate to the administration and help you fight for that conservative right on your college campus. So those are kind of the first steps in the process. The next one is to establish a good budget. So there's a few things that kind of go into the budgeting and general funding at the Luce for a Luce Center lecture. The first one is that speaker honorarium. So the speaker is likely flying or driving miles and miles to come to your school. We do like to offer them some form of payment, whether that be a direct payment or a donation to their organization. You also have promotional materials, and it kind of doesn't seem like pieces of paper or a banner would stack up to that much, but those can be significant costs, and we don't want those things coming from your own pocket, but working with the center to pay for those things. And it kind of seems archaic to put up flyers and banners, but I know that when I was in school, all the lectures I ever heard about were literally pieces of paper on a bulletin board. So they are effective in addition to those graphics that you'll see on social media. So in order to pay for all of the things that you're going to have in your budget, you have a few different options. Your school likely has a speaker fund available, and like I said, they've probably used that fund to bring on liberal speakers, so you have a right to access that as well. The next one is if you choose to co-sponsor your Luce lecture with your campus organization, whether it be College Republicans, YAF, Students for Life, you can kind of split the cost between the Luce Center and your organization, and that is a really great opportunity, again, to gain credibility. This one isn't as common, and you might not really think of it, but there are likely members of your college community in the surrounding area who want to support your conservative voice, because I know that your college campus is likely very liberal, but the surrounding areas might have more conservative constituents just as a part of the county or town. And finally, the Luce Center. Obviously, we want to support you, not just physically being there, emotionally supporting you through kind of the trials that you might face, but also financially supporting you so you can put on a fantastic lecture. So now that you kind of have a better idea of all the funding and how we want to support you financially in the process, what are the preparations? So you actually have to take care of your speaker, right? So you need to make sure that they have transportation, a hotel, that you are feeding them potentially. A lot of times speakers will come from far and wide. Maybe you're telling them, you should fly into this airport. One of my club members will come pick you up. And then you also have the opportunity to invite that speaker to dinner before or after the event. And when else do you get to have dinner with a conservative woman speaker? I think it's a really unique opportunity and kind of similar to the experience that you've been able to have at the Western Women's Summit. You also will be able to have kind of a meet and greet session with the speaker for more people in your community who have attended the event. Maybe afterwards you have the opportunity for a meet and greet and photos to be able to really bond with and have a memorable time with your conservative woman speaker. You also want to think about different kind of preparations, like booking a room. We always recommend that students book a room that is actually smaller than you anticipate needing, which it seems counterintuitive, but it is much better to have students standing in the back than to have 10 or 20 empty seats. It looks great in pictures, and it also makes the speaker feel like, the whole room is paying attention to them. We also, in mentioning pictures, we also really want you guys to book a good photographer. It's likely that your school actually has a photography club, and students at your school will charge a really low rate to come to that event and take pictures for you, so you have those high quality photos that we really appreciate. You'll appreciate the memories, and also for your club's credibility as well as the speaker. And who knows, maybe that student who's taking photos at your event will be surprised by how much they like that conservative woman speaker. So you're opening up that kind of conservative exposure to them as well. So let's say you put on a phenomenal event, everything went great, everybody's happy. Make sure you write letters to your school explaining how refreshing it was to have a different voice, maybe a voice that isn't very left-leaning on your campus. This can let the school know that it was successful, that people appreciated it, and that you'd like to have it happen again. There's also a chance that you might receive some negative articles in the media. Maybe your school newspaper published something kind of putting down your event or speaking poorly about your club. Maybe you respond really quickly to those kind of articles to be able to speak on those, make sure you're sticking to the truth, because we know that the facts sometimes get lost in those kind of negative articles. So just be reminding those student newspapers or other local media that you are you put on a great event and that people appreciated being there. Next, you're going to want to hold a new members meeting for your club. So say you're a part of College Republicans, we recommend that you would have a club meeting maybe the week after, because it's really important to ride the momentum of that lecture, because that is what gains attention for your club. So if you have a meeting right after, people are going to just head right there following the event instead of maybe losing track and kind of forgetting that you put on that lecture. And then finally, obviously, you want to show your gratitude to the speaker for all that they did for you. So we recommend writing a thank you note. Maybe the executive board of your club all signs it to let them know how grateful you are. So that is kind of the rundown for a little bit of the logistics and sort of planning process. And now Évangéline is going to come up, and as our public relations officer, she'll give some really good insight into the different publicity, as well as talk more about her experience with some liberal obstacles as she hosted Riley Gaines.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Oh, your pen. All right, so publicity. Publicity is arguably the most important thing about the most important component of the lecture process, because if students don't know about the lecture, they're not going to show up. That's just, an obvious fact. I see a lot of people running to social media right now to try and advertise their lecture, and social media is good, and I don't want to discount that at all, but it's not the most important vehicle at all, actually. I would say that flyering, as Lauren mentioned earlier, is actually much more important than that. You can't rely on social media because not everyone's going to follow your account. Not everybody's going to know that you have an account. And not everybody has an active social media account. Some people that came to my lecture, actually, they only knew about it because I was handing out quarter leaflets, and they didn't even have social media. They were people who were really involved in the poli-sci or philosophy departments at our university. They didn't even know about anything that we were posting on social media at all. So you want to make sure you have a physical presence. But that being said, social media is also important. I would try to get other conservative groups on campus to repost your event. That will definitely help up the exposure. So I would post your initial, in terms of timing, because I think all of these things are important, I would post the initial event announcement a month ahead of time, because that gives students some time to get it on the radar. But you're going to want to post reminders about it consistently. So I would say once a week, leading up to the event, so it keeps it fresh in their minds, creates some buzz. I would also ask other organizations, like I said, on campus to repost the event, or if you have them as a co-sponsor and you want to kind of get a little group together, and people, that way when people are walking by the halls and they see the posters, maybe there's an organization on there that they recognize, and then that gauges their interest as well. Of course, don't forget to post the event on your story. Don't be afraid to post it on your personal story. I was kind of infamous on my campus for that. Really didn't care because it worked. If your event requires tickets for entry, make sure that those are available via a link on your Instagram, or like either in the bio or in a sticker if you're doing an Instagram story. And also, if you want to extend your audience into the greater community, you can post the event in Facebook groups in your community. This worked so well for me. As soon as the community heard about it, they all wanted to show up. It kind of depends maybe if you go to a private versus a public school, but at a public university, you really shouldn't have a problem doing that. So on the publicity page in the activism booklet, you'll see a poster. That was actually a poster that I made for the Riley Gaines event. The final poster, though, actually, I'm looking at right now, it says Title IX in black. I actually changed that to red kind of at the last second, because at the time, this was, you got to remember this was 6 months ago. This was the day before Riley Gaines was assaulted at San Francisco State University. So she hadn't quite blown up yet. A lot has changed since then, so if I were to make anything different, I might highlight her name instead of the Title IX. Although you'll see that I did make her last name slightly larger font than her first name. These are just a little bit of some key details here. In the description, I mentioned kind of who Riley is, what she's about, and then I highlighted in red that Title IX is worth defending, because that was the most important part. I know that Paula was speaking a little bit yesterday about how it's in the process of being rewritten, and I'm like, okay, we need students to know that this is something that's important and something that's worth defending right now in its current state. The date and time are very large. You want those to be huge. I wrote April 4th. You see the 4 is like really big because students mess up a lot and you want them to know like the correct date and time. That's very important. Another thing, you'll see that I'll touch a little bit on the emailing. Email can actually be really useful if you want to get students who are in perhaps like the poli-sci department. You can email professors in poli-sci department, tell them that you're putting on this lecture. Some will even offer extra credit for their students if they attend the lecture, and that can be helpful. Something that really helped me, because it was a Riley Gaines event, is I actually flyered in the athletic department. I emailed a lot of coaches. They actually, some of them told me kind of in private that they were supporting what we were doing and sent their athletes out. So we had a lot of swim team members, basketball players, and just a lot of athletes in general who were really happy to be there. So sometimes you want to think outside of the box a little bit and reach out to more than just college Republicans or YAF members or Students for Life. Moving on. The leftist intimidation tactics part. Okay. I know yesterday I spoke about this a little bit at length. I was starting to get a little bit involved and a little bit passionate about it. And I was thinking by the end of it, I was like, did I scare anybody from hosting a lecture? And I didn't say any of those things to scare anyone. I said it because it's real. I wanted to give a real perspective of what it's like. And if you're going in, you need to be aware that it's going to be an extremely rewarding experience. I look back at it as perhaps like the highlight of my college career, but it's also going to be challenging, no doubt, but extremely worth it. So when I was writing down what I wanted to say, the first thing I wrote down was, administration and faculty will try to make your life difficult, 100%. In terms of room reservations, they will try many different tricks in the book. They could tell you that they don't have any rooms available on that date, or maybe they don't have a room available for the size of the crowd that you're anticipating. Most likely those are lies. They could also tell you that you would have to book a room within a certain window of time, that you have a very small time frame to book a room. They could also try to cancel your room reservation. They may also require an attendance list or event tickets. They may also limit the attendance, or try to at least, to the university students, which means that you couldn't potentially try to get students from other schools or the outside community. We had students from other universities come to our campus event. We had people from Central Michigan. I know I reached out to like Michigan State, Western Michigan. So you can utilize that to your advantage as well. In terms of security, they may try to state that your speaker can't come to the university because I love this quote that they use, they cannot guarantee your speaker's safety, whatever that's supposed to mean, or that your guest might cause too much of a disturbance or a safety concern on campus. They may not even offer you security. My university did not. And then I asked them, like, could we use private security? And at first they were saying, well, no, you can't do that. I'm saying, okay, well, we have like a campus police force. Like, what are you good for? What are my tuition dollars going to? So you might have to, twist their arm a little bit. In terms of funding, this did not happen to me, but I have heard stories of students petitioning their administration. I know this happened at like the University of Buffalo, I believe, that the students were petitioning their administration to revoke funding for an event. It didn't quite work out, though. Your university student senate may refuse to approve speaker funding. This depends on the school. I know at my school, I didn't personally face this because my speaker was well under $10,000, and at my university, you need student senate approval for anything $10K and above. I didn't reach that threshold, but I know that some people have had problems. I've heard the stories that student senate's not always willing to approve of budget requests. This happened at a school in Michigan. The president actually of the university rammed it through anyway, because I was shocked, stated that, we're a public university and free speech prevails here, and if you're not going to approve it, then I will have to do it myself, which is actually really impressive. In terms of protesting, you got to keep that in mind, that students may try to protest the event. I remember I was a little bit concerned. I was pacing back and forth, like, what do I do? What do I do if this giant protest breaks out? Or what do I do if people are trying to shout down my speaker and I'm like, what am I going to do? So just kind of keep that in mind, that it could happen. Did not happen to me. There's two different types of protests, obviously, in general. You have the peaceful kind. I did have peaceful protesters, people standing in the back of the room with signs. I had no problem with that whatsoever. But then you also have violent, disruptive protests. Those are obviously bad. I have two levels of what I call the sabotage tactics in here. Lauren and I were joking about this earlier. I have level 1 and level 2. And level 1 is the conventional warfare tactics, and level 2 is the guerrilla warfare tactics. So thankfully, I only experienced the conventional warfare. So that would include tearing down posters. A lot of the time, the people who do this, they're hoping that you're going to run out of an ad budget. Or maybe you'll run out of color printing options and then you only have black and white posters. Defacing posters is another one, but that's super childish. As long as people can still read it, it's usually okay. You can also put up new posters if you want. If people do tear down posters, though, it's really crucial that you put them up right away, because some people will not see. In my case, posters were taken down within minutes of me putting them up. Some people, they'll be taken down a day later or so. People won't notice them. People noticed within minutes. I put one up, walked down the hall, come back, it was gone. So I was just walking around with posters all day, basically, in between classes, just putting them up. And then other club members, of course, you want to put them onto this as well. They should be helping you with this. So that's part of the conventional warfare. Washing out chalk, if you do chalking on your campus, it can be effective, but don't be surprised if people try to wash it out. People might try to host basic protests outside your venue, or another really common thing that people are doing now is they're hosting an alternative event. In my case, YDSA, Young Democratic Socialists of America, they hosted a queer rave at the same date and time as my event on a different floor, and that was supposed to be their counter-protest event. I didn't care as long as they didn't bring the rave to me, right? So, go do your thing. Those people aren't the type of people you want coming to your event anyway. Level 2, that's the guerrilla warfare tactics. I didn't experience these, but I know people who have. So you want to keep an eye out for these, because some of these are really devious and you might not notice that they're going on. So what I mean is creating fake posters and putting them up, and their goal is that they look more real, whatever that means, than your posters, and then people will believe that. And then some people will put up fake QR codes with their incorrect information, incorrect date and time, hoping that people will show up to the wrong place at the wrong time. Some people, I have heard at the University of Alabama, some people were trying to reserve all of these available tickets for an event and try to make it so they were spamming it so that all the tickets were reserved and nobody who actually wanted to see the event could get in, or filling up the event seating ahead of time and then staging a huge walkout. So that's one that I've seen a few times happen. And loud protests, also known as a heckler's veto or storming out of an event. In order to prevent that from happening or to know your school's policy on that, I would ask your campus police department or whatever part of the administration is kind of in charge of putting on events, like student event services or something like that. I would ask them if they have a policy on that. My school claimed they did, but they refused to put it in writing. I would try to get that in writing if possible. The skills gained. All right, the last part of this is, what did I earn from this? All of the positive things after I endured the hardships of hosting the event and the administration giving me such a hard time. Public speaking skills was number one, I would say, or at least one of the top things, because I got to introduce my speaker, being the vice president of my organization, and that was a really enjoyable thing to do. Tabling skills are also really important. When you're out there tabling in your student center or wherever you're tabling, maybe outside, and you're interacting with students constantly throughout the day, you might find that some of them are really unhappy with you They might call you some mean names, whatever. You gotta, have some tough skin and just blow it off. I think that's a really good skill to have, though, is learning how to deal with those types of people. Recruitment skills, of course. Also kind of delegating tasks. I was delegating tasks to different people in my organization on what they needed to do in order to help me make this event a success. Time management skills. And maybe I'll make that number one, because there's a lot of time management skills that go into hosting a lecture. And again, the more help you can get in doing this, the better. You want to make sure that everything is timed so that the speaker arrives at the right time, that you're there to greet the speaker, that everything is coming together correctly, that the university is doing their job if they're supposed to be helping you set up the room in time for the lecture to be taking place, that they're there when they're supposed to be there. That kind of goes in with the whole event planning skills and all of that. Working with difficult people doesn't need to be restated. Understanding how a bureaucratic process works, because universities are extremely bureaucratic, and you got to understand that in order for one thing to happen, you got to talk to a list of 5 people above that person before you actually get to the right person, and then it's a whole bunch of jumbled mess. So you're going to be talking to a lot of different people in your university, probably. Not just the people in your student event services, but maybe even the dean of students as well. And learning to respond and react quickly to events when they happen. So having some sort of response measure in place, knowing how to respond if XYZ happens, whether it's a good response, bad response, whatever, keeping those things in mind. I learned how to react to many different situations and scenarios. I became way more confident in terms of speaking to people, including people who really were not fond of me. So I don't know. I think that it was a fantastic experience. When I was looking for work, I was a previous Luce Center intern, but before I even knew that I was going to be working here, every single employer that I had spoken to was very, very impressed with the fact that I had hosted a lecture, because I think people know the work that goes into it. So with that in mind, I would highly recommend. I think it's something that everybody should do at least once. And if you're good at it, do it again. If you're not a senior and you have more time and you're successful, the more you do it, I think even more rewarding it will become, and you'll make a name for yourself in a way. So with that, I would like to invite Lauren back up for some closing remarks. All right, thank you.
We also wanted to take, if you all had any questions right now that we could answer about hosting a lecture or anything, we want to make sure we get those. Yes.
Question. So for the walkouts, when all the students come and sit down and then stay until the speech does leave, how do you prevent that?
Évangéline might have some more insight into that specifically. Maybe just come back up. So. Here we go.
Yeah, so from what I know when this happened, I believe the incident that I remember this happening at, don't quote me, but I think it might have happened at Alabama. What had happened in that specific instance was that it was kind of a two-pronged thing. There were people who had spammed all of the tickets and reserved them ahead of time. They were free, you don't have to pay for them, but they reserved them. And then they were waiting in there in the seats, and they were waiting for the speaker to come out and get up and leave. What they didn't know is that the chapter that was hosting the event, there were still people outside waiting to get in, and they had a whole bunch of people who wanted to be there and be at the event. So as soon as they stood up and walked out, there were actually, it's on video somewhere, probably YouTube, more people ended up coming in, including people in the community. So it kind of looked bad on them in a way to just get up and walk out, because it was obviously supposed to be a stunt, a little publicity stunt. I think it kind of backfired on them in the end because they made themselves look kind of stupid. But a way to avoid that altogether, in my case, what I did to avoid that is I showed up really early. I showed up when the university student event services was still setting up the room, and they weren't allowing anybody else in until executive board of my club showed up. So they actually had something that you could request is that if you have campus security outside the room or a peace officer, to just allow members of your organization in before other people start coming in, so that you can kind of start filling in the seats. And I would also reach out to other conservative organizations on campus and ask them to come early as well. That's what we did. And then a lot of seats were already filled ahead of time to prevent something like that from happening on such a large scale.
Right here.
Oh, yeah, Lindsay has another mic.
Okay, yeah, but yeah.
So, like, how did you, like, delegate, like, you and your leadership team, like, kind of did together? Like, how did you delegate tasks between, like, each other, I guess?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I was the VP, and the president and I would say that we were the two people that we did the majority of the overall work, but we still had specific things that we delegated. So, for example, we had a social media manager. I made sure that he was the one who was on top of all the things social media, so that at least that part of it could be alleviated from me. In terms of flyering, one of our freshman members was actually very invested in that. So in terms of tabling, I set a certain schedule for her on what days to show up and what days she was going to be in charge of tabling and what times. It was Justin and I, Justin, who is the president of our club, we created the timeline of what days and times that we were going to be tabling. But I told our members, like, when they were going to be there. I found out when they were free in their schedule, when they could volunteer. And if they were people who wanted to be on the e-board, they were more than willing to do this, because then they're more likely to be elected to e-board. So you get them involved in doing certain days and times for tabling, and that actually relieves a lot from you as well. And in terms of flyering, a lot of our members were just carrying around flyers throughout the day. We had designated times that we go out and flyer. We designated some meetings to just going out and flyering, actually. So instead of having a traditional meeting, or maybe we'd cut it in half of it would be flyering, and then we'd have like the other half dedicated to the meeting. That's a good way to get people to actually go out and do it, so that they're not taking like too much time out of their day otherwise. So you can dedicate part of the meeting time to doing that.
We have time for one more question.
I think Myrna in the back.
I was just wondering if you would share your experiences, specifically those people that you had to deal with who didn't like you, but you had to work with them.
Yeah, actually, I shared only like half of my sheet from yesterday, because I realized I was like, I'm going off on a tangent, and it's going to sound like maybe a little bit too tumultuous. Basically, what I would say is that most of the troubles that I faced, I did have some problems with students, but students at that point, they already knew who I was. They already knew what I stood for, whatever, right? It more so impacted me because I was an RA. I was a resident assistant. And housing and resident life they were not happy with me and what I was doing. There was a rumor going around on Yik Yak that there were students breaking into dorms to go flyer. We weren't breaking into dorms. You can't break into a dorm if you have access to that dorm, and you have access to every dorm on campus. And there's no rule saying that you can't go up and flyer. They were trying to get us on like the littlest things, but in the end, we didn't really break any sort of policy. You know, they hauled us in for a meeting. The dean of students hauled us in for a meeting. University police with the dean and other administrators had a meeting behind our back that we didn't know about. There was just a lot of things that were planned without my knowledge. I tried to get the university to confirm things in writing. They refused to do so. So, you know, it was more so like that. And the students, yeah, you had someone that was cutting down my giant banner, you know, that was paid for. But I went in there and I advocated. I was, you know, my own advocate, and I told them, go make me a new one. Like, and you have to be a little bit aggressive with it too. You can't ask them, oh, do you mind if you make me a new one? No, you tell them, because you paid for it and it was taken down before it was supposed to be, so they have to make a new one. That's what you have to do, right? So it was more so dealing with people like that, and I was very firm with the dean of students. I was very firm with the people in housing and residence life, and I had an LCD, living center director, the people who are above, and they manage the RAs, not much older than me, she emailed me this nasty, nasty email calling me like these awful things. Honestly, I don't really know how like she's still employed there, because if I spoke that way to anybody in my work environment, I would be fired. I went in and I actually demanded an apology from her. Did I receive an apology? No. But, you know, I went in there and I didn't fold. They wanted me to fold. They wanted me to say, tell her that you're sorry for going into her dormitory and flyering. And I said, no, what policy did I break? Well, there's policy and practice. And we, you know, you might not have broken a policy, but we don't practice things that way. No, whatever. Just don't apologize for anything. You know, if you messed up and you actually broke some sort of rule, then yeah, sure. But otherwise, do not apologize for what you're doing. So I would say that was my number one way of dealing with these people is like, no, I'm not negotiating. What was it that Candace Owens said recently? Like, I don't negotiate with terrorists. Yeah. Follow that rule.
Okay, well, that will conclude our seminar. We hope this was really helpful for you guys. Please don't be too intimidated because we're here to support you in this, and you have the right to bring a conservative woman speaker to your campus. So, yeah, just continue to stay strong in your beliefs. And I was thinking about a friend I had at school who came into college not knowing who to vote for in the 2020 election. She came out of college a radical, you know, feminist liberal. So let's not let college campuses continue to be just mills for people to turn young people into radicals. So yeah, that is kind of the end of the Western Women's Summit. Thank you guys so much for being here. This was really a phenomenal weekend. I've loved getting to know you all. And I'd love to continue to be in contact. Please reach out to me if you have any interest in our internship, our day at the range, and especially our lecture program, because we really want to support you guys to continue to be courageous conservative voices on campus. So there are evaluation forms in front of you. A lot of you all seem to have done them already, but please fill those out. Those are really, really important for us to better events as well as get feedback and stay connected with you all. There's also donor notes in front of some of you if you want to fill those out and kind of just thank the people who fund these types of events and other CBL events for all that they've done. And lastly, please stick around for a group photo after you finished all that so we can get a picture to remember everything by. Do you have something to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you, you're getting little note cards. You are here because donors have very generously sponsored your being here. So we would like you to write a thank you note, and it'll have the name on the, I think maybe you didn't get them up here, right? Nope, I used them all. Are we missing? Yeah, I had 50. If you would write a heartfelt note thanking the person whose name is on your card, please sign it with your name and your school. We would appreciate it, and they would appreciate it very much. Thank you.